Rick and Morty. It's one of the most popular animated shows that premiered back in 2013. It's about this crazy scientist named Rick Sanchez who is mostly drunk or on some other intergalactical substances, and his timid grandson, Morty Smith, who is a usual emotional wreck of a teenager on some mix of hormones. They go on insane adventures across different dimensions and universes, getting into all sorts of random, wacky, and dangerous situations. Rick is a brilliant but, let's just say, morally ambiguous scientist who possesses advanced technological gadgets and frequently gets involved in reckless and dangerous activities. Morty, on the other hand, is more like the nervous sidekick who's just along for the ride, just for the fun of it. Their dynamic leads to some pretty hilarious and chaotic moments. The show is packed with mind-bending sci-fi concepts, darkest of humors, and tons of pop culture references. It's not just about the laughs though. Rick and Morty also tackle some deep themes like the meaning of life, family dynamics, and the consequences of messing with the rules of the universe. So without further ado, let's cover Rick and Morty from beginning to the end. Rick is the father of Beth, who married a guy named Jerry Smith. Jerry and Beth have 2 kids, Morty, who is 14, and Summer, who is 17. Rick has had a complicated relationship with his family, often displaying a detached and cynical attitude toward them. He is a highly intelligent and eccentric scientist known for his advanced technological inventions and vast scientific knowledge. He is also considered the smartest being in the known multiverse. Rick was absent from the Smith family for a significant portion of his daughter's life, including Morty's childhood. He returned to their lives only recently, suggesting a long period of separation. In fact, in the episode Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, the family is seen celebrating 1-year anniversary of Rick returning to their lives. Spoiler alert, this Rick is not the Rick that left them, but more on that later. In his absence, he embarked on numerous interdimensional adventures and travels through the multiverse. Rick also possesses a portal gun that allows him to travel between dimensions and planets at will. Rick's portal gun is not given a specific origin story in the show. However, there are hints and references throughout the series that shed some light on its creation. Again, in Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, it is revealed that in the Citadel of Ricks, a secret society of different versions of Rick, all Ricks possess portal guns, implying that he likely created his own just like any other Rick in the multiverse. In the Rick Shank Redemption, we learn a lot about Rick's past when he is being interrogated by a Federation officer. Rick shows the officer how his wife Diane and daughter Beth were murdered by another Rick, so he invented the portal gun to follow him and take revenge. Although he claims that it was all a fabricated story, later we learn that it might be the closest thing to the truth. Now, since his wife and daughter died in that memory, how is he related to the family we've seen in the entire show? Well, this just means that Rick, in search of the killer, traveled through multiple timelines and eventually decided to settle in the timeline where Beth had actually lived. We'll get back to that story later. This raises another question. What happened to Rick of the timeline he is currently in? Well, for that, we need to go back to season 1 when he accidentally infected the entire planet to make everyone like Morty. The Earth became uninhabitable, so he took Morty to another timeline where the other Rick had cured the virus, which is the timeline that we see in the first episode and onwards. But the Rick and Morty of that timeline die in an explosion seconds before the other Rick and Morty arrive. And the two just casually bury the dead versions of themselves and take their place in their family, which means that neither Rick nor Morty is related to them by blood. The show does not tell us what dimension we're currently in, but Morty often addresses himself as Morty C-137, which confirms that the Earth they infected was of dimension C-137. In the episode Rick's the Minutes, Morty even shows the graves of the original Rick and Morty of this timeline to Beth. Rick has made several enemies throughout his life, including powerful individuals and organizations from various dimensions. His actions and experiments have often caused chaos and destruction, leading to confrontations with the otherworldly beings and even cosmic entities. His adversaries include the powerful Galactic Federation, an intergalactic government seeking to control dimensions, and the Council of Ricks, a governing body that considers him a renegade. Rick has also clashed with Evil Morty, an alternate version of his grandson who manipulates Ricks across the multiverse. Along the way, he befriends an alien called Bird Person, and the two strike a deal. If Bird helps Rick find and kill the Rick who killed his family, he will help fend off the Galactic Federation forces that are constantly on his back. In the episode Ricksy Business, Bird Person meets Summer's high school friend Tammy, and the two start dating after spending a lovely evening together. In the episode The Wedding Squanchers, Bird Person is depicted getting married to Tammy Guterman, who, in a shocking turn of events, reveals herself to be an undercover agent of the Galactic Federation. She kills Bird Person along with many of Rick's friends, while Rick and his family barely escape to this knockoff planet Earth, where Rick, for the first time ever, realizes that he is bringing harm to his family and hands himself over to ensure their safety. He later escapes the prison in the episode The Rick Shank Redemption, where we also learn about the death of Beth and Diane of his own dimension. In the same episode, Morty and Summer arrive in dimension C-137, which was infected by Rick, as I mentioned before. There, the two are restrained by Citadel, so Rick has to rescue them. In doing so, he kills the entire council of Ricks and destroys the economy of the Federation. Getting back to the wedding, after Bird Person's apparent death, he is resurrected and transformed by Tammy into Phoenix Person. As Phoenix Person, he aligns himself with Tammy in the Galactic Federation, becoming a formidable adversary against Rick. In the episode Starmort, Rick Turn of the Jerry, Phoenix Person, who is under the control of the powerful Galactic Federation, confronts Rick in an intense and deadly battle. However, just before he hits the final blow, Space Beth steps in and shuts down Phoenix Person, putting an end to chaos and saving Rick from certain doom. Later, Rick brings his remains to his garage and enters his memories to tell him that he has a child with Tammy. Bird Person, now revived, goes in search of his daughter. Oh, I forgot to mention who Space Beth is. In the episode The ABCs of Beth, Rick reveals how he created an island named Floppyland to keep Beth away from the real world, given her questionably aggressive nature. She once brought her friend Tommy inside and pushed him into a river of honey in hopes that it would kill him. Right, a smart move, Rick. The police arrested his father thinking he ate his own kid and was scheduled to be executed very soon. Seeing this, she returns to the Fruity Land with Rick in hopes of rescuing Tommy, if he is still alive that is, after all these years. Turns out, Tommy had started breeding with the friendly creatures of the island to reproduce kids, only to later eat them in order to survive. Yes, we warned you about the darkness of the show. When Beth asks him to return to his own world, Tommy refuses and she ends up killing him, well, because it just runs into Sanchez blood, I guess. She then returns with his severed finger and asks Rick to create a clone of him so his father can be saved from execution. However, she still feels guilt and questions her personality, prompting Rick to offer her a clone of herself. She could go and have wild adventures in space while the clone takes care of her family, and the clone can be shut off at any time she wishes to return. She's unsure at first, but later decides to take the offer. Now at this point, the original Beth and Jerry divorced because he tried to sell Rick out to the Federation, but the other Beth suspects that she is a clone and gets back with him, hoping that together they can raise the kids better. Meanwhile, Space Beth joins forces with the Intergalactic Resistance until finally returning to Earth, which causes Tammy and Phoenix Person to come to Earth in her chase. Even though Rick kills Tammy, he nearly dies in a battle against his former best friend until Space Beth and the clone Beth save him. The two bonded over trauma of having a bad father, but ended up saving his life. Later, it is revealed that Rick shuffled the two so he doesn't remember which one is real, probably because he didn't want to have to kill his own daughter, so really we don't know which one is the clone and which one is real. By the end of the episode, the other Beth continues her life with the family, while Space Beth goes back on her space adventures. Later, during the 6th episode, Space Beth returns to Earth and even goes on a mission with other Beth. The two settle their differences and bond over having a bad father. In fact, their bond gets so strong that they kinda fall in love with each other and secretly have sex all over the place. I bet you didn't see that coming, but no one did. And you know what the worst part is? Jerry actually enjoys his wife and his ex-wife hit it on in front of him. Now that's a sick family. After this incident, Space Beth becomes a much more active member of the family. Now moving on to more of a major plotline, the Citadel of Ricks is a hidden city composed of various versions of Rick from different dimensions. It suggests that there are multiple versions of Rick existing across the multiverse. The Citadel acts as a city where Ricks and Mortys coexist, with a social hierarchy based on achievements. Each Rick is accompanied by a Morty who helps conceal his genius waves because Rick's genius waves are cancelled out by Morty's not-so-genius waves, making him harder to track. Now here's the most interesting bit. Remember how earlier Rick fabricated an entire memory in which his wife and daughter died at the hands of another Rick, and that fabricated reality was actually a real one? Well, in that same episode, our Rick can be seen creating his own version of the portal gun. However, even before he could make a working module, another Rick appeared and offered him a place in the Citadel. Now keep in mind that each Rick working in the Citadel is the smartest man in his own dimension, and each one of them is capable of being our Rick, a fugitive who works as a rogue from the Citadel. As seen from clips throughout the episode, these Ricks, perfectly capable of achieving so much more, are put to mediocre tasks such as butlers, bus drivers, chefs, and so on. Now this is what makes our Rick different. You see, even before he could finish his portal gun, he was approached by Citadel, but he refused to join them. Soon after, his family was murdered by most likely the same Rick who offered him a place in the city. Now, I have a crazy theory here. What if the evil Rick never intended to kill Diane and Beth? What if he intended to kill Rick? And what supports this theory is that as soon as the other Rick left, his wife Diane walked in asking if he made any breakthrough with the portal gun. Rick, in a moment of affection, decided to give up on science entirely, something he has not done in any other dimension. He even gets in his car to take Beth and Diane out for ice cream, something he probably never did in any other dimension as well. This is why the other Rick never expected him to leave his garage and tried to blow it up hoping it would kill our Rick, but sadly his family was caught in the crossfire. However, he did not invent the portal gun right after his family died. In fact, later we learned that it took him months to get over the loss and invent the portal gun. Now you may be wondering why Rick was targeted for refusing to join the Citadel. Well, there could be many reasons. What if they foresaw the possibility of the damages he could cause later and decided to get rid of him? What if it wasn't Crossfire and they actually wanted to kill his family because they were the only reason he refused to join? You know, for once, our Rick was a happy man whose life was polluted by the Citadel. Later in the show, Rick destroys the Citadel and kills the entire council of Ricks, leaving the society with no apparent government. This is where we introduce to the character whom everyone calls the evil Morty. As I mentioned earlier, Rick has also clashed with Evil Morty, an alternate version of his grandson who manipulates Ricks across the multiverse. So at the end of season 1, we see that the Rick that was killing other Ricks in other dimensions was actually being controlled by this Evil Morty. In the end, we see him return to the crowd of Mortys entering the Citadel. In the episode The Ricklantis Mix-Up, we see Rick and Morty from a different dimension collecting funds for the redevelopment of the Citadel. Without the console, the city has turned into a metaphor of the real world where the inferior Ricks work for the amusement of the superior Ricks. Even the Mortys have somewhat broken the slavery chain and are working regular jobs. Well, not all of them. Most of them are put in school where they learn to be a better Morty to their Ricks. However, this constant NPC life has been affecting the inhabitants of the city and they are ultimately turning on their own kind. The whole place is falling apart with both Ricks and Mortys looking for a way to escape the city. The Citadel is also holding an election, and alongside some elite class Ricks, we see a Morty running for presidency. However, with a heartwarming and inspiring speech, Morty unexpectedly manages to win the elections. But things go south real quick when his former Morty assistant shoots him in public. Luckily, President Morty survives the assassination, and we learn that he is the same Morty who controlled the Rick to kill other Ricks. With that, Evil Morty is now the president of the Citadel, and big changes are coming for the city. In fact, a big change that occurs in the same episode is that in a council, a table of the elite class Ricks expects him to be their puppet and let them run the city like they always have. And the first thing he does is eliminate everyone who shares the same ideology. His campaign was based on unity and equality between Ricks, and also about freeing Mortys from this endless sidekick role. So the question stands, is he really an evil Morty? Or is he the most sane Morty in all of the dimensions? I mean, the guy is literally removing corruption from the Citadel and breaking the chains of slavery. In the same episode, we follow a storyline of a corrupt Morty cop accompanied by an honest Rick cop. The Rick cop had to eliminate the corrupt Morty cop and was detained and was most likely going to be executed. However, after Evil Morty took office as president, he let Cop Rick free because he had the courage to stand against corruption that pollutes the city. Not only that, he even disbands the school that was teaching Mortys to be a good sidekick, so really, I don't think the name Evil Morty is suitable for this guy. But maybe the show gave this name in a satiric way. Later in the episode, Rick Murai Jack, President Morty invites our Rick and Morty for dinner, and after some convincing, Rick agrees to come. There we learn in an epic plot twist that our Rick in fact built the Citadel. In the beginning, this society found itself at odds with Rick C-137, who went on a killing spree targeting its members in his quest for Rick Prime, the Rick he blamed for death of his family. After C-137 eliminated numerous versions of himself, a peace treaty was forged between him and the Alliance. As part of the agreement, C-137 assisted in the design and construction of the Citadel. Anyways, over dinner, Evil Morty reveals that he plans to locate and take down the central finite curve, and immediately, Rick wants to dip out of the dinner. He is definitely hiding something. Evil Morty also reveals that he has scanned most of Rick's brain, and since he was the one who engineered the Citadel, Evil Morty can use it to rip a hole through the multiverse and destroy the central finite curve. He then injects our Morty with memories, which reveals something rather disturbing. You see, we already know that the Citadel uses Morty waves to hide its location from the Galactic Federation. However, what we didn't know was that Ricks from all dimensions were purposely causing Beth and Jerry to end up together and give birth to Morty. They would then steal the DNA of that Morty and bring it to Citadel, where they would make infinite clones of Mortys. So even if all the original Mortys died, they would still have a never-ending supply to hide their base. Soon after, we learn that Evil Rick has hacked the portal guns of every single Rick and Morty on Citadel, so they will be killed whenever they use it now. This means that our Rick and Morty can't escape either. They make it their way to the core of Citadel, where Morty questions the disturbing reality of his life. To make him understand, Rick gives him his own memory injection, which again takes us to the memory of his wife and daughter dying. We also learn that Rick spent several years looking for the Rick that killed his family until he learned that the killer belonged to Citadel, which made him mercilessly kill every Citadel Rick he came across in hopes of finding the killer. However, as we see in the episode, he was unable to find them. But the manslaughter, or shall I call the Rick slaughter, caused the Citadel to send hundreds of Ricks to kill him. None of them were able to harm our Rick until eventually he decided to visit them personally and perform a full-on genocide. Fearing his strength, the other Ricks started worshipping him and made him the leader of the Citadel, but Rick just abandoned his kingdom and crashed into some random dimension Earth, where he saw his daughter Beth and decided to stay. Later, they stumble across Evil Morty, who explains what the central finite curve really is. You see, the Ricks of the Citadel created a barrier in space which separated all the universes from all the other universes, where Rick is not the smartest man in the universe. This means that by destroying this barrier or opening a tear through space, Evil Morty can go to a universe that is not under the influence of the never-ending chain that the Ricks have spread on this side of the barrier. Before doing so, he overflows the entire city with portal fluid, killing thousands of living Ricks and Mortys on the Citadel. There's this one other thing that I forgot to mention. You see, the Ricks had developed a backup plan called Operation Phoenix, which basically stores the clones of their bodies in healing chambers, and whenever a Rick dies, his consciousness can simply be transferred to the clone in the Citadel. However, Evil Morty had already anticipated this and had laid traps inside the chambers, which killed all the clones as soon as they were brought back to life. Evil Rick escapes in a spaceship to the other side and uses his gun to open up a golden-colored portal, something that we have never seen before. We're unsure of what that really is, but we hope to learn more about that later. The Citadel is truly destroyed this time, and Rick and Morty barely escape alongside some other deformed Mortys. However, as we know from the episode, Rick's portal gun is out of fluid, so now they are stranded in space with no means to return home. But no worries, because Space Beth arrives to their rescue and they return to Earth, only for Rick to accidentally reset all the Ricks and Mortys, meaning that they must return to their own timelines now. However, once all the problems are solved, an accident happens that ruins the entire planet. So they all move to a similar timeline where all of their previous versions conveniently die by a natural cause. They bury them in their backyard and go on with their lives in this new dimension. Honestly, I have no idea which dimension we are in right now. The entirety of Season 6 mainly focuses on Rick's attachment to his family. Before, he would just dip into a new timeline if anything bad would happen, but now he stays behind to protect them. At one point, even Morty wants to leave the dimension, but Rick insists on staying. For the first time ever, we see Rick actually care for his family and even put himself at risk for them. Even Morty acknowledges this change in Rick and appreciates him for finally being a responsible parent. However, the whole image is ruined when Morty learns that this apparently so affectionate Rick is just the robot replacing the original Rick, who is so obsessed about finding the killer of his original family that he has locked himself in an underground lab. However, before the robot dies in a totally non-canon way, he says that Rick built him to do everything he himself is capable of, which makes him realize that he shouldn't have excluded Morty from his plans to find Rick Prime. He takes Morty into his lab and says that he has finally made a breakthrough in the Find the Killer case. But it will be a lot easier and much more fun from here on out because now Morty is by his side. So this was the entire timeline of Rick and Morty so far. What a show. It has everything from most random and inexplicable events from the multiverse to some saddening, dramatic, yet wholesome family dynamics. It is just one of a kind. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing cartoons like this recapped on your feed. And press that bell icon too so you never miss an upload. With that said, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.